So if you tell me 10 years ago I'll be teaching a class on colors, I'll probably laugh at you because unlike lines, color is something that doesn't come naturally to me at all. And all through art school, color has been my big weakness if you ask any of my past teachers. But I work extra hard at overcoming that weakness and that fear. And I'm really excited to share with you what I did to get to where I am at this point. So I started looking at other people's work, seeing how they use color and not just looking at it, but actually pulling them into Photoshop and sort of isolating the colors with eyedropper, which is what we're going to do today as well. I also started looking at a lot of books in patterns and textile because they usually have really interesting color combination that's easy and simple to just grab and to sort of steal for your own use. And we're going to do that today as well. So essentially, today's class is like a super condensed version of what I did for myself in the past 10 years to get to where I am now with my colors. So how today's class is going to work is that at first we're going to go back to the basic, kind of get familiar again with the color theory, at least the foundation of it, so that we can all have a common vocabulary to talk about the class with. And then we're going to look at some real life pieces, trying to marry that color theory with practice, dissecting artists' work, and then see how they're using color to their advantage. And finally, we're going to try to take an existing color palette, break it down, and then create swatches that we can use for our own artwork. Even though we might not know how to create color yet, I think it's pretty innate as human to sense color. So when we're choosing the color palette, we're already making a decision of, what kind of emotion I want to sort of borrow from other pieces that can be applied to our own. And through the process of refining those colors into our own palette, we're also making decisions on the objectives that we want to achieve with those colors. So I've created a piece just for today's class. The work is a little bit more simple than my usual work nowadays. It has a very clear foreground, middle ground, and background, and I recommend that you also have a more simple line drawings and composition to work with, so that way it won't complicate things and we can really just focus on the colors. So just to give you a correct expectation, you're not going to get a PhD of color after this. We're not going to go into a super comprehensive color theory. I'm not an expert in that. This is just something that works for me and make color less scary. If you really want to get nerdy about color, which is really fun, I've also included a bunch of useful links in the class resources section. So as you follow along, you might notice the colors is different from the film footage of my screen than the actual video captured on the screen. That just can't be helped because of the light, the glare, the environment factor. So if you're wondering which one is the more accurate color, it will be the screen capture. So that would be the one that you reference the color for. So today what you will need for this class is Photoshop or some kind of digital software such as Procreate if you're using iPad. I'll be working on the computer today and on this beautiful tablet. You don't need something that fancy. You can use whatever you use, like iPad or a simple small tablet to draw on. Because colors exist in its surrounding, I like to optimize my workspace to make sure I'm not getting unnecessary distraction. So I'm really seeing the color that I should be focused on. So when I'm at home, which I'm not at right now, my workspace is facing a blank wall. So it gives me minimal distraction. I have to make sure that my screen is not directly under any light or glares. If you are super particular about, making sure the colors in your screen looks right, you can get those monitor hood that kind of looks like blinders they put on horse. I guess that also keep the colors focused on the screen. Another thing I like to do is to set my desktop to a middle gray. I also set the background on my Photoshop to a middle gray. So then I won't be tainted with colors when I'm making decisions. So when I first start getting my work published, I noticed to my great dismay that the color was wrong in the printed word. And so I looked into it and found out that apparently all monitors have different color settings, which I didn't know about before. So what you see, what you spend hours like trying to fine tune on your monitor could look totally different on other people's monitor and in print. And one thing that has really, really helped me was a color calibrator, which is this little guy. There are many brands that make this. This is just what I use. So essentially what it does is the software will run these color swatches on your screen, and you just put this little guy, like kind of like this, on the screen. So it will measure how accurate those color swatches is seeing and kind of calibrate your machine that way. So now my color in print is much more accurate thanks for this little extra step. One thing you may not know is also your monitor is kind of like a live organism. So the color changes over time as the screen ages. So even if you calibrate it, it's good to get into the habit of doing it every once in a while, like once in a month. So feel free to follow along any of the setup tips or not. You don't have to do any of that and you can still follow along. Now that we're all set up, next step, let's